I just wanted to look out the window.
Sit here just as long as you like. And just a little bit longer.
So there have been a few things that I have been thinking about recently. When the science fiction movement of the 1970s with films like Star Wars and Planet of the Apes took over a lot of genres, one of the genres that was most heavily affected was the Western. And what defined a Western needed to change in order for it to survive, which brings an interesting idea. How do you make a modern Western? In 1966, The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly reshaped storytelling with its morally ambiguous flawed characters and anti-heroes at its center. Its nonlinear structure and use of visual storytelling, where silence, expression, and framing often spoke louder than dialogue, set a new standard for cinematic language. It's one of the most influential works that heavily impacted the Western genre. And while the neo-Western, the modern Westerns we have today, bring the idea that a Western can no longer be as simple as good and evil, they do still hold on to a core understanding of the Western genre. Audiences don't know what good and evil even means, and that brings an opportunity to use the fear of the unknown as a central theme, which is what the drama-infused Paramount original TV miniseries 1883 continued to do. Taylor Sheridan directed and wrote the first episode of the series, which set the bar for how he wanted to portray the West and its characters. The Oregon Trail isn't about cowboys and gunslingers, and the West isn't pretty, it's brutal. He set the stage for a Western that doesn't make you feel like a hero. There's no soundtrack to carry you through, it's just the land and the struggle. Sheridan's style in 1883 is built on a foundation from films like Sicario and Hell or High Water. There's something about his way of showing harsh environments that feels unique. Whether it's the grim borderlands of Sicario or the poverty-stricken dust-filled plains of Hell or High Water, he makes the setting feel like a character, as if it's actively working against you. This becomes clear as to why actions don't show hesitation. Someone steals your wallet, you kill them. There isn't time to be moral because if you are, it's an unnecessary middleman to survival. One of the better scenes in 1883 is when a pickpocket is caught, shot, and hung all in a matter of seconds. There's no emotional outcry, no long speeches about justice, just a quick execution. And this is only interrupted by more violence when gunfire erupts out of the crowd, and only then do we cut to the rest of the episode's lead characters who are just casually watching the chaos. The scene is a brutal, unvarnished glimpse into the survival mindset. It's not just about punishing theft, it's a demonstration of the harsh calculus of the time. Justice is immediate and hesitation is deadly. The people in this world are not defined by their ability to do good, but by their ability to survive. It's what makes the relationship between the Pinkerton agents Shaw Thomas and the group of German immigrants and their voyage up the Oregon Trail so fascinating. Shaw and Thomas aren't defined by their virtues, but by their ability to survive, getting from point A to point B, no matter the cost. Although people might not like how they go about moving forward, at least they're moving forward. Sheridan's work builds on the classical Western principle of the frontier. The frontier isn't just the wildness of the land, but the moral frontier that each character is forced to navigate. Traditional Westerns featured clear-cut moral archetypes, heroes and villains, each with a distinct role to play. But instead of relying on tropes of good and evil, Sheridan taps into the fear of the unknown. The West, as he portrays it, is not a place for heroes and villains, it's a place of unforgiveness, where moral choices aren't clear and they're blurred by the unforgiving nature of the environment and the violence that comes with it. Sheridan forces us to ask the question, in a world like this, who even has the right to be called a hero? While watching most of the first episode of 1883, I couldn't help but be reminded of Seth MacFarlane's A Million Ways to Die in the West. It's comedic to see how similar the brutality was in both the TV show and the film, and yet one is about the viciousness of the West and the other comments on its almost comedic nature. It's telling of the intensity that the West brings, that comedically it is absurd, but also it truly is absurd. And speaking of navigating this chaos, whether it's surviving the unpredictable dangers of the Wild West or the modern-day frontier of digital threats, staying protected is essential. That's why today's video is sponsored by Aura. This year has seen major data breaches exposing millions to identity theft. Dell's breach affected 3.9 million customers, Ticketmaster's breach compromised over 560 million records, and just a few months ago, National Public Data's breach recently exposed 2.9 billion records, including names, addresses, and social security numbers, information now freely available online. If you're not taking your digital security seriously, now is the time. In today's digital frontier, we are more vulnerable than ever. Thankfully, I feel secure because I use Aura. Aura monitors your personal data, including your social security number, across billions of data points like the dark web and public court records to alert you about potential identity theft. They also provide up to $5 million in identity theft insurance in case the worst happens. Aura's features include real-time breach alerts, a VPN for secure browsing, a password manager, and tools to stop data brokers from selling your information. Protect yourself now by visiting aura.com/Sophia to try Aura free for 2 weeks and see if your personal data is exposed. The same way Aura protects you against the absurd digital threats you might face, Taylor Sheridan leans into the idea of absurdity as a way of describing the West, not as a backdrop for heroics, but as the core reality of life during that era. Survival isn't romanticized, it's treated as the raw, visceral struggle that it was. But one thing I've always understood Westerns to signify is that the West is a reflection on contemporary American ideologies. The Western is America's largest contribution to the world of cinema, and we can't really forget that. The concept of a Lone Ranger was never a new idea, even for the 1940s, but the impact of films like Stagecoach and Dances with Wolves created a narrative that always ties people who are dependent on their lonely independence to the Western genre. Now Westerns are more so correlated with a visual narrative for a psychological study of a cowboy, or at least a character with the potential to be one. The West isn't just characters we want to play Freud to and psychoanalyze, and it's not just inherently violent. So what does the West look like? Directors like Sheridan say it's about showing history in its purest form, that the Westerns of old are the references we use to adequately curate a representation of the spirit of the West. Not only is the physical aspect of the West important to portray, but the metaphysical idea of the West is equally as important. The land and its occupants are at odds, and it makes for an interesting story. If you want to take meaning out of the act of a character and their choices, then by all means create your own moral narrative, but what's really going on is people realizing who they actually are once all they have left is survival and whatever beliefs they had until then. The West isn't all bad. It's definitely not all good either, but why is the West so easy to depict as a moral ground for one's identity? For a debate on whether the human condition is solely based on the circumstance that land inhabits traits of good and evil. I do wonder if that's how the West was, or if that's just how we remember it. Either way, I'm sure Sheridan knows more than I do, and that his West is a frontier worth exploring. My name is Nico, the channel is called Sophia. Thanks for watching.